Hi, my name is Maya. Welcome to my channel. This is part 6 of a comprehensive overview of Supernatural. Yes, part 6. And no, this is not the last one. But we conquer. I think we're gonna do 2 more. Everyone, let's just say 2 more and we'll see how this goes. I'm almost done. It's very close. However, this was a very long category. This one is just all main character analysis. So this is what the entire video is. So just so you know, you're only getting one role and it's just going to be character analysis. So if you want to only watch the character analysis, then this is the video. If you don't care about the character analysis, then just go watch some other videos. I think it's pretty fun. I think it's pretty interesting. I definitely do a deep dive into every single character who I consider to be a main character. Dean's deep dive was 8 pages long, so I had a lot to say. But yeah, that's pretty much what this entire video is. I'm just gonna give it away because that's what it is. And so then take it away past me. One. Okay, so roll the 1, which is main characters. Alrighty, the main characters. Okay, so we're gonna start with Dean. Let's make Dean come forward. Come on, buddy. Oh my god, fall. I put him on the carpet. So I'll just make him come forward like that. Actually, kind of bring him on the floor. Dean. Oh my god. Okay, so let's talk about what makes Dean Dean. He must be either wearing a flannel or a nice fitted jacket, which we can see on the cardboard cutout. The lame cheap necklace are just my adage, you know. Usually he's wearing, like, you can't see his pants, but usually they're like blue jeans or black jeans. Honestly, pretty uninspired wardrobe, if I do say so myself. But that is essential to Dean. The flannel. Everyone in the show wears a goddamn flannel. Anyways, Dean also really loves his car. You know, the famous Impala. He loves his car so much, he calls her his baby and would most likely murder someone who dared to take her away from him. Dean's also very much into music, but like only old music, you know, like music my dad would listen to and has in his CD collection. You know, that type of music. You know, and he believes that that music is like superior to all other music. Hence him constantly looking down on any other music ever made. Sorry, Celine Dion. Dean doesn't like you. Dean's also a huge movie and like TV show nerd. He loves his old Western movies and his Halloween slasher films and Dr. Sexy MD, of course. Food, especially meat and pie. He's also a very good cook too, surprisingly. He loves alcohol, like shitty beer. He like sometimes has it for breakfast, but it's only when he's in deep, dark depression, grief mode. He doesn't really like reading or research, you know, he's not as big a fan of that as Sam. He's more of like the hands-on guy, but you know, that being said, he does know his stuff and is actually like really knowledgeable when it comes to Supernatural, and he will take the time to do research when it is necessary, even if he doesn't particularly enjoy it. Very skilled hunter, not gonna debate it. Yeah, I think that both Sam and Dean can be really stupid sometimes, but like they're good at their job, okay? They stopped many apocalypse. I have stopped 0 apocalypse. I cannot judge them. Dean really hates witches and kind of angels, but like every single angel except that angel. And the show will literally never let you forget that. He will make a comment about it every time there's a witch or every time there's an angel that isn't Cass. Sometimes even Cass. Dean's afraid of flying on an airplane, but he does go to Scotland that one time. So he can threaten Crowley, like to burn his bones and then get Bobby out of his deal with Crowley's then he'll get Bobby's soul back. So he did it for Bobby. He's also allergic to cats and appears to hate most animals, but he does have a dog at the end of the show. And at one point he like could communicate with dogs. So I guess he got over his hatred of dogs after that one episode where he could like communicate with dogs and was like becoming a dog. So it was a pretty weird episode. Dean's kind of an asshole. Sometimes he's really great, other times not so much. That being said, I think that Dean is quite personable and he can easily charm people. He is in fact a chronic player in the first 2 seasons of the show, and he does get lucky a lot, so that says something. Which brings me to another one of Dean's interests, sex. Dean is very much into sex. It's not bad in itself, you know? Like, you want to get laid, Dean? Go ahead. You want to watch porn? You do you, Dean. You want to make lewd jokes? Okay. But not only is he like into himself getting laid, but like everyone else around him too. Like he is always wanting Sam to get laid, and he's just way too invested in Sam's sex life. That's your brother. You know how uncomfortable it makes me when Dean is sitting in his car watching Sam and Sarah kiss and like nodding his head in approval. Like, how about the time that he didn't call Sam for help when him and Jack were trapped in their own dungeon because he thought Sam was having sex and like didn't want to interrupt him because it had been a while since Sam had gotten laid. It's not just with Sam, he does this with Cass and even a bit with Jack. Like when he finds out Cass is a virgin in season 5, he like takes Cass to a strip club so that Cass could have sex. Like, hey Dean, you know what you could have done? You could have just had sex. I need to stop. Okay. In season 14, when he takes Jack on his like little bucket list adventure time, he literally offers to take Jack to a bar so he can get laid. But he's like, Jack, I know a bar that's like super easy to like get laid at. And Jack is like, no, I'd rather go fishing. I'm 2 years old. Like he is dedicated to making sure that everyone he loves is getting laid. Why? Dean also has like his childish teenage boy sense of humor where he just like plays stupid pranks and he makes bad jokes, but sometimes they're like bad dad jokes too. So there's that. He also really enjoys teasing the people he loves, and he's got like some sarcastic dig energy at times. When he's in a good mood or like really excited about something, he can be like super happy and full of life and, you know, just likes to have fun. So that's kind of the overview of Dean. Now we'll get into specifics. So one of the things that I love the most about Dean is how much he cares for the people he loves. He's like not the most verbal about his love for people, but Dean shows his love through actions. I think the biggest example of like the depth of Dean's love is Sam. Like Dean loves Sam so much that he always puts Sam first, without question. Sam comes before everyone, including himself. I don't necessarily think this is healthy, if we remember me going over their relationship, but I think it does show how much Dean cares about Sam. Like whether that be trading his life for Sam, like making the Crossroads deal in season 2, or like staying by his side when he's in need of help, like in season 7, when he did everything he could to stop the Lucifer hallucinations, or like committing to helping Sam get his soul back in season 6 when Sam was soulless and kind of dark. You know, when he loves someone, he will do anything for them. Dean is also extremely loyal. Dean is loyal to his family and he values his family and friendships a lot. It sometimes boggles my mind how Dean has been able to like stay and continue to have relationships with people who have lied or betrayed him in some way. Like for example, Sam in season 4, when he betrays Dean and lies to him about drinking demon blood and using his psychic abilities, and then breaks the last seal and starts the apocalypse. Like Dean is mad at Sam, and they do end up splitting up for a bit. But like he realizes they were better together, and he puts like aside his feelings of hurt and betrayal and anger and continues to be loyal and love his brother. He did the same with Cass when he betrayed them in season 6 and tried to become God. He eventually forgave Cass, and in Purgatory in season 8, he continued to care about Cass and like refused to leave him behind in Purgatory. If Dean considers you family, he will be loyal and stay by your side, you know, for the most part. Where I think he draws the line is when someone hurts someone he loves. So like he can forgive Sam and Cass when they hurt him, but like we saw in season 14, when someone he loves and cares about hurts someone else he loves and cares about, that can weaken his loyalty and connection with that person. I'm of course talking about when Jack killed Mary by accident in season 14. This showed me about Dean is that though he's quite loyal, I do think his loyalty does have limits, and that is usually when someone he loves is harmed. This is because Dean puts others before him. He really does care more about other people than himself. I mean, think about the fact that he spent the vast majority of his life hunting. He puts the entire world's safety above his own. He truly does care not only about the people he loves and his family, but just people in general. He gets like a lot of self-worth from being able to help others, which is very commendable. So I did mention family before, but I just want to reiterate that family is very important to Dean, whether that be his blood relatives like Sam, Mary, and John, or like his found family like Cass, Bobby, and Jack. Dean grew up really only with his dad, John, and his brother, Sam, because of how they grew up isolated from other children their age and with no other family members and very few people outside of the three of them. Like the only other people being like hunters like Bobby. I think this bred a very strong emphasis on the importance of family and putting family first. Almost like an unhealthy obsession with family, because if the only thing you ever know or have is your family, you're going to do everything you can not to lose them, and also will stay with them even though it may not be best for you. I love how much Dean loves his family and how much Dean strives to have a family. I just think that his obsession with family kind of takes over his life to the point where Dean doesn't really make decisions based on what he wants. It's based on what like his family wants. For instance, he only decided to hunt and most likely felt obligated to continue to hunt because it was the family business. John trained him to be a hunter, ingrained him in the hunter way of life, and made it his way of life. I don't think Dean ever thought that there was anything else he could do or wanted to do because it's the family business and he doesn't want to disrespect his father. I think a lot of Dean's internal struggles in seasons 1 to 5 was him figuring out what he wanted. If he truly wanted to be a hunter or if he wanted to be normal, have a normal life. Was it angry when he moved in with Lisa? Yes, mostly because it made no narrative sense for him to be with Lisa. But him wanting to try having a normal life when he never had that is completely understandable, especially when his life was constantly in danger. He had a lot of time to think and have regrets and question his life. Once he left that normal life behind, there was a shift in Dean where he became more comfortable with his life and he chose hunting this time. This is really important because like free will is one of Dean's favorite things ever. He doesn't like to be told what to do or be controlled by outside sources, goals. Having a choice and living his life by his rules is something he needs, which is why he was so shaken by finding out that Chuck had been manipulating them and controlling them their entire lives. He values his independence and freedom of thought, and when that is taken away from him, he doubts everything, including himself. I think what's so lovely about Dean's arc is that he created his own family. He had Sam, his brother, but he also formed a deep bond with Cass, and they all co-parented Jack. He got his mom back briefly, and he even considered a lot of his friends as family, like Kevin or Charlie. He chose his family, and when John comes via Magic Pearl in season 14 and expresses that he thought Dean would have a family by now, referring to a wife and kids, and have given up the life. John, you did not see the trauma you were causing. Dean says that he does have a family and is secure in his decisions and the way he lived his life. I love that. I love how his priorities never shifted from family, but his family shifted, and he got to surround himself with people he wanted in his life. And though it wasn't normal, it was his life and he wouldn't have it any other way. So Dean's depth of love, I think, has like this intoxicating effect on the people around him. As you may have guessed from how I explained how Dean loves people, it's completely and utterly. He feels such depths of emotions for people, which is why he grieves. When he grieves, it's scary sometimes. What I wanted to note though, before going into Dean's not so great traits, is how powerful Dean's love is. Like, we have been shown time and time again how Dean's love changes people and stops the goddamn apocalypse. Like, let's take a moment and think back on what Dean's love has accomplished, shall we? Well, first, he got cast to portray heaven for him. He also managed to get through to Sam while he was Lucifer in time to stop the apocalypse. I mean, obviously, like, Sam's love for Dean was a factor in that, but like, Dean's love for Sam, I mean, was the reason why it was able to like go through. I mean, it was equal, but like still, that's the not the point I'm trying to make. He was able to stop Sam from completing the trials and killing himself. He basically inspired an entire goddamn angel movement for free will, and he was able to talk Amara out of destroying the world. I think Dean gets screwed over by a lot of people, by the people he loves, but he also inspires deep loyalty in people. Even during cases with people he barely knows, he's able to make these really moving speeches based on his own experiences that are able to like inspire the victim or even the bad guy to change their ways. I think the best example of this is when in season 10 he's talking with Cole, who is trying to kill him, and Dean is honest and real, talks about how many regrets he has in his life and how Cole should not kill him, not because Dean doesn't want to die, but because he doesn't want Cole to go down the same path he did. Cole's a family and a life that he should prioritize. It works. Cole backs down. It's because Dean can be so genuine and honest when push comes to shove that he's able to get out of situations like this. It's because you don't doubt that Dean means what he says. Dean cares about Cole not going down the hunter route and the revenge route because he doesn't want people to live the way he's lived. It's just genuine love that exudes from him. Even people who hate him change their tune. But what made me realize how intoxicating Dean's love can be is the whole Crowley ordeal in season 10. Because like, I think for the first time we saw a character actively want Dean's affection and love in the way that he gives it to like Sam. I wouldn't count Cass necessarily because I think he gets that love from Dean. Like, maybe not the love he wants, but he gets it from him. So imagine you are Crowley. You're a demon and you run into the infamous Winchesters. You watch these two idiots for years. You see the way that Dean acts with Sam and Cass. You admit when you are being cured of your demonhood at the end of season 8 that you just want love. Well, here's Dean. He exudes love, and you've experienced this many times. You think, hey, let's take a shot at this. So that's when we get Dean and Crowley's Summer of Love. In that first episode of season 10, when Dean is a demon and Crowley's partying with him, you can tell that this is what he wanted. He wanted Dean's love and loyalty. He even gloats to Sam that he's taken Dean from him. The problem is that Crowley got Demon Dean, and Demon Dean isn't capable of the love that like regular Dean is. Even having like Dean's not at full capacity love, Crowley still mourned their time together and acted as though he had gone through a breakup when he gave Dean back to Sam. After this, he even became Dean's bitch, kind of. Like, Dean calls and Crowley comes. I mean, in season 12, like, he kind of deviated from the path, but he died to save Dean and Sam and, and to get his revenge. Not to mention what Dean's love did to Cass. Oh my god, what Dean's love did to Cass. It's poetic. But that's for another time. I just really want to talk about them, but like, I have to hold back, I have not been holding back, have I? Surprisingly enough, I had way more to say about them. If that makes it better. So what makes Dean's love so and sought after and influential in this show? So let me tell you my theory. Dean is not exactly the nicest guy, and he can be a great asshole. But the thing about Dean is that when he loves you, it's almost like an ethereal experience. His love is so complete and consuming. He may not express his feelings a lot, but like, it's that high of knowing that someone would do literally anything for you, that no matter what you did, you would be forgiven. I mean, to a certain degree. That feeling of gaining the love of someone whose love is like quite guarded and isn't so easily garnered, being privy to the sides of Dean that no one else ever gets to see. It's that thrill of like having someone obsessed with you. Like, when Dean loves, he fucking loves, you know? Shifting gears a little bit, Dean may be the most traumatized person I've ever seen. I mean, well, Sam as well, but he drips in trauma. I mean, Sam and Cass even went inside Dean's head, and Cass was like, oh my gosh, so much trauma. I mean, he already knew his boyfriend was so traumatized. Oh my god, he's like, oh my gosh, look at all the trauma. Like, oh shit. Which is why, like, I want to preface what I'm about to say about Dean, all of like his negative traits, with the fact that a lot of Dean's flaws are rooted in his trauma, like of losing his mom as a child, from being raised on the path of revenge by a pretty closed off drill sergeant style father, from watching Sam die so many times, from like losing the people he loves, from being in hell for 30 years and then torturing for 10 years, and you know, like from their job, hunting monsters, stopping apocalypses. That's pretty goddamn traumatizing. You know, throughout the show, Dean faces so many trials and tribulations. He has given up hope multiple times. He's been kicked down by people so much more powerful than him. He has died 12 fucking times. He has been betrayed by those people he loves, and he has had people sacrifice themselves for him. He has not had an easy life, and there is simply no way that he would come out of his experiences as a well-adjusted human being. Unless he like went to therapy and like actually worked on himself, but it's Dean. There are so many things great about Dean, but he is far from perfect, and he has done a lot of things that I really do not condone or agree with. Dean is an extremely emotionally volatile individual. He has anger issues. There's like no other way to state that. He has extreme anger problems. He does not have a grasp on his emotions, and he's very poor emotional regulation when it comes to his anger. His anger is the vast majority of the time connected to losing someone he loves. For instance, the first time we see angry Dean, and I mean like really angry Dean, is when John dies for him in season 2. In season 7, when Bobby dies, the same anger surfaces. It's the same when Cass dies in season 12. It's the same when Mary dies in season 14. This Dean is so angry and is so out for blood and revenge. He literally goes on a murder spree at the end of season 10 after Charlie dies. He was being affected by the mark of Cain, so that was just an extreme upgrade of Dean's normal anger when someone dies. But still, that does show how angry he can get, you know? Dean can also become extremely angry when someone he loves lies to him or betrays him. For instance, Dean was so angry at Sam when he was drinking the demon blood and using his psychic powers and lying about it. They literally beat each other up in a hotel room, and Dean called him a monster. And then on the flip side, we have someone he loves being in danger, which will make him angry, like how he angrily attacked Billy with her staff when she wanted to take Jack away. He gets angry when they hit a dead end when it comes to saving the world. He gets angry when he fails. Dean's just a very angry person. It's not who he is. I agree with what Cass said when he died. Okay, it's not defined by his anger, but he is angry, okay? He's not always angry, but he can get very angry very quickly. And I think it is important to note that Dean was deemed worthy to take the mark of Cain from the world's first murderer, because he was told he was a killer like Cain. And now, there are also parodies between the Cain and Abel story they chose for Supernatural, which is like Cain got the mark so that Abel wouldn't have to, you know, the whole brotherly sacrifice thing. So that kind of also made it so that Dean, you know, got the mark because he would do anything for Sam, right? Do I think that Dean should define himself as a killer? No. I think he has the anger and rage to make him a killer, and he is a killer. Do you remember when he just like stabbed a pool stick through that guy he sang songs with in season 15? He like sang a song with him, he was an old hunting buddy, and he just stabbed him through with a pool stick and then never felt anything about that? That was weird. I mean, think about him in Purgatory and how he even lamented to Benny about how simple it was there. And there was just that, like, you know, it was just all killing. And there was that rush of killing. I do think that Dean needs hunting as an outlet to deal with his anger. Every time he's in the peak of anger, he just wants to hunt and kill. Now, Dean does actually acknowledge his anger after it almost costs him his relationship with Cass. So what exactly does he say? So he says, I don't know why I get so angry, which I think is very true to Dean. I think this anger is something that he largely can't control, and it's built up of years and years of trauma. He then says that he knows it's always been there, and when things go bad, it comes out. Now, I think this is actually some really good introspecting here on Dean's part, because I have seen flashback Dean, and I know for a fact that he's probably never not known that anger, considering his mom died when he was 4 years old, and then John was a shit father. When the world was shit, Dean was shit back to it. And it makes sense when it comes out, when things go bad, because for Dean, losing the people he loves is the most traumatizing thing that can happen to him. And I know this may seem obvious to say because this is the most traumatizing thing that can happen to anyone, but I mean in a sense that Dean has trauma associated with losing his mom at a young age, and that was never dealt with in a constructive manner. So losing people is a trigger for that specific trauma, and it is beyond important that Dean start to acknowledge this truth. Look, Dean doesn't behave normally when a loved one dies. He goes crazy, either bringing them back, going suicidal, losing his shit at everyone, going on a murderous rampage, or like all of the above combo. And I think it is very telling that even after all this time, he really can't identify the root of his anger. So like the next part of this little purgatory apology where he acknowledges his anger issues is interesting. So he says that he can't stop it no matter how hard he wants to. He seems to view his anger as like an uncontrollable force. And I think to an extent I can see where he's coming from. Like, I do think that Dean hates his anger, and he hates the way he pushes people away with it. But it's also how he reacts when things go badly. And he does so out of fear and really bad coping. Whether it be his fear of abandonment when someone he loves dies or ignores him or lies to him or betrays him or is in danger. Whether it be his frustration at losing or not being able to control something. Dean gets angry, and he hates that he gets angry. And he hates that he is a killer and has this anger in him. I mean, Cass was absolutely right when he pointed out when he was talking with Dean that Dean sees himself as like an angry, blunt instrument. He hates himself. We'll get into that later. Before I move on to talking about how much Dean hates himself, I want to say this anger being driven by trauma does not make his actions excusable. I can understand where he's coming from, but that doesn't mean that like he doesn't have to take accountability for the way he does act when he's angry, you know? I think, you know, that doesn't mean that him manipulating Jack into spending the rest of eternity trapped in a mallet box was okay. Like, I can understand it, I do, but that doesn't mean it was okay. So the thing that I hate most about Dean is his anger. I think he can be incredibly mean and dangerous and volatile. I can understand where his anger is coming from, and I know that this is his pain being expressed. This is how he copes. He searches for revenge, someone to kill, someone to blame, and sometimes that person is himself. But it's not healthy, and I really wish that the show had attempted to address Dean's anger issues more and had him actively working to be better. Crowley, in season 9, episode 11, spoke the saddest truth ever. No one hates Dean more than Dean hates himself. I think this complements very nicely with what Cass says about Dean, seeing himself as Daddy's angry, blunt instrument. I don't think Dean sees his own worth. I don't think Dean values his own life. I mean, in season 5, when they ran into famine, he had no crazy cravings or basically things he wanted, because famine literally said he was dead inside. He values everyone else's life over his own, and he has shown this to us many times. The first, of course, being the season 2 Crossroads deal for Sam. Dean is so willing to die. It's actually scary sometimes, especially if someone he loves just died and he blames himself, or if like someone he loves is in danger. Think about season 11, episode 17, where he thinks Sam is dead and he just chugs a bunch of meds and overdoses so he can talk a Reaper into bringing Sam back from the dead. That's not normal behavior. Dean doesn't believe that he deserves happiness or to live. It's actually so sad. He sacrifices his own happiness to hunt, and I do think that he sees this as a way to atone for his mistakes and lessen his guilt. Like, saving people can counteract all the bad he's done. Except the thing is, Dean is the only one who's blaming him for the vast majority of the things he feels guilty about. Like, whenever someone he loves dies or is just put in harm's way, even if it's not his fault, I feel like he takes personal responsibility for that death. He carries with him the guilt of the fact that that person died and he's still alive. Think about how his dad died for him in season 2, and Dean felt guilt and didn't think that he deserved John's sacrifice. Like, think about how he went into Apocalypse World and saw the alternate version of Charlie and still felt so much guilt over her death that he detoured the entire mission to save the alternate version of her. I think he truly believes that he should sacrifice himself for the greater good. That's his his responsibility. In season 13, he lets Michael possess him, the one thing he fought so hard against in season 5 because it would save Sam and Jack. I mean, he always talks about how he wants to go out fighting. I can't believe he died on Reaper. He makes himself into a bomb in season 11 to kill Amara and was at peace with that decision. He wanted to spend all of eternity locked in a coffin at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean with Michael in his head to prevent the world from being destroyed. Dean is not selfish. In fact, Dean should be more selfish. Dean even gets mad when others try to make the sacrifice instead of him, like in season 8 when Sam did the trials to close the gates of hell instead of him. I don't even think he has a hero complex. I just truly think he thinks his life is worth sacrificing for others. It's actually so sad how he never got the chance to show that he cared about his own life. Not because people he loves talks him out of it and pull him out of his self-destructive, borderline suicidal behavior, but because he realized that he was worth it, that his life is worth living. After giving up so much and sacrificing his own life so many times to save the world, after saving the world for the final time, imagine how powerful it would have been if he retired and finally gave himself a peaceful, safe life. Whether it is the normal life they quote me in the show or not, I don't care. What I do care is that Dean, though I think was quite comfortable with his life, did want out of hunting, and I don't blame him. It upsets me that after hearing from Cass like the most beautiful things about himself, that he never got a chance to show how he learned to value his own life in the end. Dean also has some good old fear of abandonment, which comes from that lovely trauma of losing his mom at the age of 4. I think that a lot of Dean's anger is connected to this fear. This fear is most prevalent with Sam. I think that Dean always fears that Sam will leave him, whether that be voluntarily, like giving up hunting, or involuntarily, like dying, which is why he can never let Sam go, as I mentioned in their relationship analysis. I mean, he brings Sam back from the dead in season 2 and season 9, even though Sam does not consent in either. The whole Angel co-pilot ride thing that I have talked about many, many times. I mean, he's so scared of losing the people he loves that he does things like trading his life. However, I will point out that in season 13 he showed some growth by not following Sam's dead corpse into the vampire-infested nest, because Cass said that Sam was beyond recovery and he would die if he went in there. I loved that scene, like, a lot. I think that showed that Dean grew in the sense that he felt there was still a reason to live after Sam died. I also think that Dean does something really interesting, which is completely counterintuitive to his fear of abandonment, but it makes sense in my eyes at least. Dean, when he feels that he's being abandoned, will react by pushing that person away further as like a safety precaution to protect himself from further abandonment. He can be the one to abandon that person first, you know? He takes control of the situation and the relationship by pushing the person further away. Dean loves being in control, so I think that fits his personality. Some great examples of this come from season 8. I think season 8 showed an amazing exploration of Dean's fear of abandonment. The first instance being Sam not looking for him while Dean was in purgatory. To Dean, this was seen as abandonment because Dean would have searched high and low for Sam. And the fact that Sam didn't do this is a betrayal of their brotherly bond, and it is effectively Sam abandoning Dean to the wolves. And Cass as well. The way that Dean deals with this anger towards Sam is to push Sam to leave and be with Amelia. By Dean being the one who decides to let Sam leave, he is effectively in control, and it's like he chose to abandon Sam, not the other way around. It's like when someone breaks up with someone else and they get offended that they were broken up with, so they like try to break up with you with the other person instead. We have the same thing going on with Cass, where Cass abandons him multiple times throughout this season, and at the end of the season, Dean basically writes him off and won't talk to him anymore. And his reasons are that Cass was ignoring him and that Cass didn't trust him. Not that Cass tried to kill him when he was under Naomi's manipulation. So Dean pushes Cass away with his anger, so as a defense mechanism from letting Cass be the one who abandons Dean. His fear of abandonment is still very much present in season 15 with Cass when they broke up, because Dean pushed Cass away. I think not only out of anger about this snake sizzling incident, but also because he believes that Cass's friendship isn't real because Chuck's been controlling them. He probably feared Cass leaving, and so he was a dick. And then when Cass actually did it, it was like confirmation for Dean. And then when he realized he was the one who pushed Cass away, when Cass came back, by the way, I think that scenario was a really good learning experience for him, because he was able to admit that he was at fault and that he let Cass go. He could have stopped him, but he didn't. I think that was very important for Dean to learn in terms of his fear of abandonment. The fact that he has a part to play in this supposed abandonment, and he needs to treat people like he wants them to stay if he does. Just some extra things about Dean I want to briefly touch on. He is a functioning alcoholic, some seasons more than others. He usually drinks the most amount of alcohol after he loses someone he loves, which I think just couples into his poor grieving strategies and grasp on his emotions. He has a very high tolerance for alcohol, and at his worst, he will drink beer for breakfast. If he is ever blacked out drunk, that means that something really bad happened. For instance, he passes out on the bunker floor after drinking a lot after Cass dies in season 15. I usually gauge how Dean is doing throughout the season based on his alcohol intake. Dean's also super impulsive. He doesn't think too far in advance when making decisions. For example, he gets the mark of Cain after hearing a dire warning about getting it, but doesn't want to know any of the side effects. Why, Dean? Dean's not the best parent, hence almost killing Jack multiple times. But he does symbolically adopt every child he meets and tries very hard to counsel them on not being like him. He does this with Claire, most notably. Dean gives literally everyone nicknames. I mean, Sam, nicknamed Sammy. Castiel, nicknamed Cass. And Cass's nickname was so prevalent that everyone just calls him Cass. Jack, he calls Kid, which he mostly calls most kids he meets. Yeah, he just really likes to give people nicknames. Even when Sam's so short, but he makes it longer to give him a nickname. He gives Belphegor a nickname. The demon that possessed Jack's corpse in season 15, he calls Bell. It's honestly kind of a problem. Oh my god. That's the demon possessing your dead adopted kid's corpse, buddy. Why did you give him a nickname? Dean is shit at expressing his emotions of love verbally. And I mean, he literally cannot say I love you. He says I love you 3 times throughout the entire series. Once to Mary, once to John, and once to Sam. Now this frustrates me because characters have said they love him and he just doesn't say anything back. And it's awkward. Sam does it too. But, it's really fucking awkward. I'm not even just talking about Cass. Kevin says he loves them, and they just stand there staring at him, and it's I can't do it. I can't do it. It's so awkward. So there's this lull. And it was like, oh, okay, they're not gonna say it back. Oh, that's awkward. Like imagine you're Kevin, okay, and you're a ghost, right? And you're a ghost because Dean made a stupid impulsive decision that got you killed. In season 9, you come back in season 15 and you're like saying goodbye, right, to Sam and Dean, and like you say you love them and they just stand there smiling at you. Gave me secondhand embarrassment. I just think he's afraid of commitments and love and all that jazz. Even if he is the most loving person. I just think it's a lot for him, which may have been contradictory to what I said at the beginning, but he verbally expressing it is not it for him. Actions are one thing. Words he sucks at. And like that's fine. I don't necessarily think he has to say that he loves someone to like prove that he loves people. It's just, no one says they love Cass back. And it upsets me. I love you, Cass. Oh no, now they're just staring at me awkwardly. I love you. Even if they won't fucking say it. And Cass says he loves them twice. And neither time they say it back. Why? The disrespect to my boy. The absolute disrespect. He deserves more. Last thing, Dean is for the most part, obviously not like all the time, but he's a pretty hopeful person. And he does believe in himself and the people he loves to accomplish things. Even if that thing is, defeating God, which should probably deter a lot of people, but not Dean. So that was Dean. Let's move on to Sammy. Sammy! Can't yell like him. Don't look. Sammy! No. Okay. So Sam is like defined by his luscious long hair, which he got like Jared Padalecki got a haircut. He looks great with a haircut. He looked bad with the long hair. Oops. I didn't say that. No. It wasn't my favorite haircut. He looks good with he looks better with short hair. Anyways, yeah, Sam had the long hair, his plaid shirt, and his boring jeans. He pretty much dressed like Dean. There was no creativity in the wardrobe area. No offense to the wardrobe people. I mean, it's just that like they were pretty bland dressers is all I mean. Sam is considered the nice brother, and he is a nice guy. He's like very scholastically oriented. He was going to go to law school before Dean arrived at his doorstep and then just died, which is impressive. He got like a really high score on his LSAT too. He's the most highly educated in the group. I don't even think Dean graduated high school. And Cass was alive way before higher education. He likes reading and podcasts. He enjoys researching and takes on the brunt of the research between him and Dean. He enjoys exercising and likes to eat healthy and take care of himself. He's the calmer antithesis of Dean's over-emotional ways. Sam is personable and gets on well with others. He usually doesn't start fights and is pretty understanding of other people's situations. He has a lot of compassion and empathy for those around him. I really do love that about him. Sam is pretty logical and he usually likes to fully understand a situation before jumping right into it. He really values knowledge and intellect. He, like his brother, is a very skilled hunter. Sam also has a lot of sarcasm and can be pretty witty sometimes, not gonna lie. He's also afraid of like clowns, and Supernatural will literally never let you forget that. He also doesn't like Halloween because he embarrassed himself at a party in front of his crush on Halloween when he was little. Did I really need that backstory, how Supernatural? Or could you have done, I don't know, literally plot things? Maybe someone enjoyed it. He is an animal lover and had an adopted dog in season 8 that he just left with Amelia and then never talked about the dog again. I wonder if Sam ever missed that dog. Then he appeared very less than enthused about the dog that Dean adopts for like reasons. I don't know. I would say that family is very important to Sam. Sam, like Dean, is very attached to his family. He also lost his mom, and he also never really got to know her because he was a baby when he died. So I think that makes Dean especially important to him because I feel like he was the only family he was ever really connected to, which is why losing Dean is a huge fear for Sam. He literally goes dark side to get revenge after Dean dies at the end of season 3. Sam will do literally anything to make sure Dean stays alive. which I will admit is a very hard task. Because as I mentioned before, he'd be so suicidal. He really doesn't value his own life. He basically is okay with starting another apocalypse-style event to get the Mark of Cain off of Dean. He breaks down in agony and cries to Dean when Dean thinks about locking himself in the mallet box and taking a forever vacation at the bottom of the ocean. Sam does desperately fear losing the people he loves, not just Dean. I mean, he's the one who spearheads the movement to bring Jack back from the dead and goes through with it despite Dean's valid warnings considering what happens when they usually bring people back from the dead. He's very overprotective of Eileen when they start dating. I will say this is probably due to the fact that Jess, the first woman he ever loved, and the person he was going to marry at the beginning of the series, died being attacked by a yellow-eyed demon. Sam has lost a lot of people, and I think the weight of that does drag him down and affect his decisions a lot. He did grow, because at the end of season 15 he was able to let Dean die and not bring him back, and he moved on to live a happy life that we got to see in a montage. Ooh, montage to wayward son, 'cause carry on a wayward son. There'll be peace when you are gone. There was peace when Supernatural was gone. Not for me, I was just angry, but eventually I'll find peace. What's interesting about Sam is that he has a quality that Dean never had, and that's that he can see a life beyond hunting. Sam left Dean and John to go to university because he didn't want to be a hunter his entire life. He was able to see a future without hunting in it, and I think this is due to the fact that Dean took on a lot of the hunting burden off of Sam's shoulders, and he was very much sheltered from that life, and he wasn't forced into it the way that Dean was. See, what I think is super interesting about Sam, and almost kind of annoying at times, is how much he bounces between wanting a normal life and seeing hunting as his life. I think that is because he had a normal life for a while. He got out, and it's because he's lived a different way that he knows there's more to life than what's right in front of him. I mean, he ends the series giving up hunting to go live a normal life. Sam was very much the entire series very uncertain of his place as a hunter. I don't think that he ever saw himself as being as good as Dean. I mean, he basically says that to Dean at one point. He also has the fact that his career as a hunter has been very full of huge mistakes, like starting the apocalypse. He has a lot of doubt in his ability to make the right decisions because of the mistakes he made as a hunter. He trusted Ruby, and she was playing him the entire time. Without a soul, he was merciless and without a conscience. What I do think was nice is that in season 12, he does start to step up as a hunter, and even though he made the mistake in trusting the British men of letters, he moved past that and was able to finally start to believe in himself and his judgment again. I think it did help that Dean said he trusted him. Then in season 14, he actually leads an entire hunter operation, making the bunker into an HQ. The sad thing is, all of his troops slowly disappear or are killed throughout season 14. Yeah, that was something he had to overcome throughout the seasons, especially because he always felt comfortable taking a backseat to Dean and being non-confrontational. And I thought he did do that by the end of the series. He does have a fear of abandonment from Dean specifically. I would say also some other people, but I would say it's very prevalent with Dean. He's very understanding with his friends and family, and he does have a lot of empathy for everyone he meets. For instance, I don't think that Sam and Cass have ever actually fought. Sam is usually pretty chill with Cass. In season 6, when Cass betrayed them, he was the one who reached out and tried to talk with Cass and understand his motivations. He wants to see the best in everyone because he's messed up before, and he wants to give people the chance to change, like the one he got. He's also very understanding of where Mary is coming from when she decides to take some time for herself to adjust in season 12 and leaves the brothers. Where his fear of abandonment really kicks in is with Dean, as I mentioned before, is a very emotionally volatile person. This can lead to situations where Dean can say very hurtful things. I think the best example of Sam's fear of losing Dean comes in season 8. Sam doesn't try to get Dean out of purgatory, and Dean is extremely hurt by this. He tells Sam that he doesn't trust him anymore and tries to get Sam to leave to go be with Amelia. Right, we went over this. Sam, though, ends up choosing to stay with Dean. This is because he fears if he leaves to go be with Amelia that Dean will never see him again. Dean will just completely write him off. Sam, I think, can let Dean go in a death sense, but if Dean is alive, Sam can't let him go. He then works so hard to regain Dean's trust so that Dean won't leave him or replace him. At the end of the season, when Sam is close to closing the gates of hell, Dean comes rushing in to stop him. Sam says a few notable things. He talks about how he went into confessional to purify his blood. All of his regrets were around Dean. Sam, I think, always feels like he's letting Dean down. He let Dean down by going to university. He let Dean down by becoming addicted to demon blood and starting the apocalypse. He let Dean down by not searching for him when he was in purgatory. He fears that the more he lets Dean down, that eventually he'll lose Dean's trust, and then Dean will replace him with someone beautiful, like Benny or Cass. Sorry, Sam. I think another layer to it is that Dean does everything for Sam, and I think that Sam feels so much guilt when he lets Dean down because Dean has been there for him every step of the way, through the good and the bad, and he wants to repay him. He doesn't want to continue to be a burden to Dean and wants to help Dean in the way that Dean's helped him. I think that he does so. He does do that and shows his desperation around helping Dean in season 10 when he did literally everything to get the mark off of Dean, you know? And stuck by his side through all of this shitty Dean behavior and spent weeks tracking his demon ass down. And in season 14, when Dean gets possessed by Michael, Sam focuses all of his energy and time into finding Dean and getting him back. Shifting gears here a little, I think my favorite thing about Sam is his empathy and compassion for others. Sam extends so much empathy and love to Jack when he first meets him because he understands what it's like to be Jack and to fear his powers and what he might do. I think Sam has amazing capacity to see past people's faults and understand their motivations and fears behind their actions. He's very protective of the people he loves and shows tremendous loyalty to people when they mess up. It's truly a commendable part of Sam. Every time Dean messes up or Cass messes up, Sam is, for the most part, very forgiving and is able to understand and empathize with their positions. I think the biggest proof of how Sam is just a pillar for empathy is how he reacted to Jack accidentally killing Mary. You know, I get mad at Dean for how he reacted, but like, their mom was killed, you know? So obviously there was going to be anger. And Sam's angry too. He has every right to be. But he comes to a realization that I think shows he is a wonderful human being. I don't give him enough credit sometimes, like, for how amazing he can be. He realizes the complexity of the situation. He's lived without a soul before, and he has done things he regretted while he didn't have that soul. He knows that's not who he is, or at least he hopes that's not who he is. He gets that they brought Jack back from the dead and gave him this soul-sucking power to stay alive. So they are partially responsible. Not just Cass and the stupid sizzled snake, but all three of them brought him back knowing the risks. He sees that Jack drained his soul to save them from Michael, to save Dean from Michael. He understands that Jack has a precarious hold on his powers, and that can lead to problems. He's still upset that Mary died, but he doesn't want to kill Jack. He still, at the end of the series, views Jack as family. He is able to understand people's mistakes because he's made mistakes he regrets, and he knows the factors that went into it. It is so beautiful to see that despite what Jack did, he knows it was an accident and that Jack immediately tried to make amends in his own very confused way. I thought that was really beautiful, and I commend him for being that way because not many people would be. Sam has also felt like an outsider his entire life. Sam lost his mom. He never really got to know her until she came back from the dead in season 12. He never really got along with his father, John, and he was a loner kid. He even had an imaginary friend because he was so lonely. He never felt like he belonged with Dean and John because they were hunting and would leave him behind, and he was kind of babied by them. He wasn't even told about the existence of monsters until that Christmas episode when he was like 6 or 7. He didn't get to make any close friends until he left to go to university. Then, of course, Sam had his whole psychic powers demon blood phase. He was given demon blood by Yellow-Eyed Demon as a child and then started to develop psychic powers because of it. And then he can supercharge if he drinks more demon blood. That made him feel like more of an outsider than he already was. I think as the show progresses, he was more comfortable in feeling like he belongs with Dean and with his found family and as a hunter. I think that's really nice to see. This also helps him understand those who are more like outsiders because of their circumstances. you know, like Mary who came back from the dead after 30 years, or Jack, a Nephilim. Sam really wants to do the right thing. I think that he tries extremely hard to be good, and I think he denies himself a lot of his emotions in service of keeping up this image. Like in season 12, when Dean told Sam that he was always on the mediating side of a fight and never takes a side or has an opinion. Yes, that was said out of anger, as Dean is known for. But he had a point. Sam, I find, has a lot of emotion management and regulation because he's afraid to lose control of himself. He can't explode like Dean can because Sam fears what will happen if he does. Sam is a recovering addict. His addiction is demon blood. And I think that him falling down that hole in season 4 really changed who he is and how he views himself. Sam tries to atone for his sins, but he's also keeping himself from ever returning to his addiction. Sam has a dark side, and it scares him. He fears himself so much that he asks Dean to kill him if he ever goes dark side in season 2. He's Lucifer's designated vessel and was chosen by Yellow-Eyed Demon to be the bringer of the apocalypse. When he didn't have a soul, he was a dark person, and we learn later on with Donatello that not every person who loses their souls immediately goes bad. It affects people differently, and I think it is quite telling that Sam without a soul was a very dark person. Like, Donatello was just, you know, like a functioning psychopath, if that makes sense. Like, he was able to check himself, even if he didn't feel the way that he did before about things. Sam just went full bad. I mean, if we think about it, he let the darkness out to save Dean, and to do that, he chained Rowena in an abandoned warehouse. By the way, where do all these abandoned warehouses come from? And made a deal with her to kill Crowley in return for getting the mark off of Dean's arm. That's pretty dark, man. He tries to keep that dark side in check, and I think that is why he is so emotionally guarded and closed off sometimes. Sam, just like Dean, feels a lot of guilt surrounding the people he loves getting hurt or dying. He takes responsibility for Kevin's death, even though he was unaware of Gadriel being in his body, and it was Gadriel who killed Kevin technically. He had to watch his own hands kill Kevin. He feels guilt about not stopping Jessica's death because he had a vision of her death in advance to it happening. He feels guilty when all of his hunting group people were slaughtered by Michael. He feels guilty when he kills Rowena, even though it's what she asked for. Sam carries around a lot of guilt, not only about the things he's done, but all the deaths on his shoulders that he takes responsibility for, especially when he feels like he could have done something to stop it. Like how in season 4, when he went down a super dark path to get revenge against Lilith using his psychic powers, because in season 3, when Dean was being dragged away to hell, he could have stopped this using his psychic powers. That regret made him go dark and on an extreme revenge quest, which is actually something he has in common with John. He went on a revenge quest against the Yellow-Eyed Demon after Jess died because he felt he needed to avenge her death. It was the exact same as John's revenge quest to avenge Mary's death. Sam, when he feels an emotion of guilt, fear, regret, grief, whatever negative emotion that it is, will consume him. And he will focus like I've never seen someone else focus. He will look to fix or to avenge the problem. It's that scary focus that makes him so susceptible to the darkness inside of him, because he will do anything to complete his mission and nothing else matters. We see this in season 10 when he's trying to find Demon Dean, and he like tortures demons and pulled his shoulder. Like, doing that, but literally did not stop. I think Sam has a little bit of a superiority complex. Like, I know he fears himself and all that, but I do think that he thinks he's very intelligent and prides himself on how nice and good he is. Like, he makes little comments to Dean about how he reads, and he says it like me when I was 14, and I thought that made me not like other girls. But the not like other girls phenomenon is a defense mechanism, because you feel inferior to like other girls and have insecurities. So you try to make yourself feel better by accentuating your uniqueness and putting down others. I know that Sam has always felt like an outsider, and I think that was perpetuated by how much of a nerd he is. Sam has the mindset of a YA protagonist who is not like other girls and is the chosen one. But like, he's not the chosen one, so he kind of has this chosen one complex where most of his problems come from thinking he's the chosen one. Sam starts the apocalypse because he thinks he's the only one who can stop the apocalypse. Remember how he was manipulated by Ruby into thinking his powers could kill Lilith and stop her from starting the apocalypse? And he really wanted to believe that. Sam thinks that God is talking to him in season 11, and that it is actually Lucifer tricking him. And Dean told him all along it was fishy. And guess what happened? Lucifer possessed Cass. He truly thought he was chosen by God to stop Amara. He just really believes that he is the chosen one. I think the need is even deeper than just wanting to be the chosen one. It's being able to atone for the sins of his past. Cass brought this up in season 9. Sam wants to die a hero so he can make up for his mistakes in the past. It's probably why he was okay with sacrificing himself to end the apocalypse or close the gates of hell. His death wish is more based around sacrificing himself for a cause. It's all based around his guilt for his mistakes. What kind of grinds my gears about Sam? It's like how hypocritical he can be. Like I think of season 9 when he got mad at Dean for the non-consensual angel fun times in his body. And he was talking about how he would never do something like that to Dean and was making Dean feel so bad and was like kind of harsh to Dean. He, in my opinion, emotionally tortured Dean for a few episodes because he came back and hunted with Dean, but was super distant with Dean and very cold, and they would fight about what happened, and Dean wasn't budging on his decision and wouldn't apologize to Sam. And Sam could have just walked away because it was obvious they were at an impasse, but he stayed, and it just made things awful. And I'm not going back on what I said because Dean is at fault in the entire situation, but I want to talk about how I also think Sam handled it badly. Then when Dean is dying at the end of the season, he tries to bring him back from the dead, and in season 10, he goes against Dean's wishes to take the mark of Cain off. So such a hypocrite. And he was making himself to be out to be all emotionally mature and more put together than Dean. Also, this is kind of minor, but remember when Metatron didn't know who Sam and Dean were when they first met, and Sam was all offended that Metatron didn't know who they were? He's got a bit of an ego. I think this isn't a bad thing. I think you should think well of yourself, but it can cloud his judgment sometimes, and it has led him into avoidable scenarios. Sam has a lot of trauma, the same amount as Dean. His mom died when he was a baby. He never got to know her. His father was pretty neglectful of him. There was some bullying in his childhood. People he loves dying, being addicted to demon blood, being locked in the cage in hell with Lucifer and Michael, and being tortured by them, and so much more. He deals with his trauma more internally, just like his grieving, which is more quiet and depression-like. I do think that he's very closed off about these things. And there's this one moment in season 13 where he's talking with Rowena and the Impala about how he's still traumatized from what Lucifer's done to him, and how he doesn't talk about it, not even with Dean. I found that really interesting. I think it just goes to show that Sam was always internal with a lot of his trauma. A few other things about Sam. He is a good parent. He's great with Jack. Sam is overall a pretty reasonable dude, and I think he is a good contrast to Dean's craziness sometimes. I also just want to add that I think Sam was kind of neglected by the writers, especially in the later seasons. I think a lot of the time Sam was overshadowed by Dean's plot. I think that is something that Sam has kind of always felt his entire life, the sibling trying to live up to the achievements of the older sibling. But in terms of actual real life writing, of the show, I think as a whole they put more effort into Dean's character than Sam's. I may think that because I never really gravitated towards Sam as a character, and after season 6 I kind of lost a lot of interest in him, and I even disliked him at certain points. But obviously I still love him, but yeah, he was never my favorite, and I do think he was neglected by the writers at certain points. I'm gonna do Cass now. Cass, yeah. Go behind. Come forward. Castiel. Alright. Castiel, aka Cass, nickname given by Dean, is an angel of the Lord. We first meet Cass in season 4 of the show after he pulls Dean out of hell so that he can fulfill his destiny as heaven's chosen one. Cass starts off the show very much like a typical angel, who we get told in season 4 don't really feel emotions and blindly follow orders. However, something happens to Cass. He feels an emotion for a certain hunter, and he starts to question his orders and eventually betrays Heaven, effectively falling from heaven. And so begins the 11th season run of Cass on this show. Cass is defined by his outfit. He wears this outfit about 90% of the show. He is only not in the outfit, like, in season 9 when he's a human, because this is like his angel outfit, right? And then like he doesn't wear the tie for the second half of like season 9, and then Claire makes a comment about how she liked him better with the tie, so like he puts the tie back on. Also in season 7, when he's like in the mental ward, he's only wearing the trench coat over the mental ward outfit. Anyways, yeah, he wears this literally the entire 11 seasons on the show, basically. Not the cheap medicines or anything, that's my thing. But anyway, his outfit consists of a trench coat. That's how you know he's an angel. His little tie. He's got his suit on and a white shirt on. It's very iconic. Cass is a very socially inadept angel. He doesn't understand sarcasm, teasing, or any reference to anything pop culture, especially for the first few seasons he's on the show. That being said, Cass has a lot of sass in him, especially when someone, mostly Dean, questions his abilities. I think by the end of the show, after spending a lot of time with Sam and Dean, he's a lot more human, and he understands more about social interactions and has a better grasp of their minutiae. Cass has a bit of temper, and he can be a bit dark at times. Cass can also be reckless and at times quite impulsive. Cass is also a sweetheart and is fiercely loyal to those he loves. Cass really does have good intentions and does want to help the angels and his family. Sometimes it doesn't always work out, but he tries. I think that Cass's two biggest struggles throughout the show are his struggle with free will and his struggle with belonging. The thing about being an angel is that you don't have any free will. You were built to blindly follow God's orders. Well, Heaven's orders in the case of Supernatural. Chuck is a shit god and doesn't turn up for work a lot. Cass is kind of like Lucifer in a sense where he questions Heaven's orders and effectively exercise free will in doing so. Now, I don't think that Lucifer did this because he fell in love, but correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe I missed the love story. Cass struggles throughout season 4 with his cult-like loyalty to Heaven and his feelings towards Dean and what Dean is introducing to him. For the first time, he has doubts, and the angels even notice that Cass is starting to like Dean too much, direct quote from show, and take him upstairs for rewiring, and it still doesn't work. When Cass betrays Heaven and gets Dean out of the safe room to stop the apocalypse, I mean, he fails, but there's another shot in season 5, don't you worry. This is the point where Cass stopped belonging with the angels, but also never really felt like he belonged on Earth either. I mean, we do get him saying that to Mary in season 12 about how he also never felt like he belonged on Earth. This is also the point where Cass used free will for the first time, and he struggles with what free will entails and how to use it. What I think is really interesting to note at this point is that in season 15 we find out that out of all of the Casses in all of the alternate dimensions, he was the only one who betrayed Heaven for Dean, which I think is super important because this is also one of the only Sam and Deans that are resistant to Chuck trying to get them to kill each other. So I think this shows how impactful his relationship to Sam and Dean was to the fate of Sam and Dean. Cass struggles a lot with his decision. I think a lot more than the show shows us. I can imagine the pain of being blacklisted from the angels who he has spent eternity with, who he considers family of a kind. I think this is really exemplified throughout the series as Cass bounces back and forth between the angels and Sam and Dean. He always goes back to the angels to try to help them. Like after the apocalypse is over, he goes back to Heaven and helps them, giving the angels free will, and it backfires into a civil war where he tries to become God. In season 9, even after he's manipulated by Metatron into making the angels fall from Heaven, and he's literally on their kill list, he still wants to help them adjust to human life on Earth, and he feels like this is his purpose. He once again leads an army in the Angel Civil War for control over the fallen angels, only to lose his angel army because of Dean. I just love Dean so In season 12, he teams up with the angels to track down Kelly and kill her before Jack is born. I mean, he doesn't exactly stay in that team for long, but you get my point. Even though the angels hate Cass and always try to kill him, Dean is always extra upset when Cass goes to heaven because everyone hates him. He still tries to help the angels. He still turns to that community for help throughout the show, like when he asked them for help finding Jack in season 14, though that really backfired. He also carries around a lot of guilt for how many angels were lost during the season 6 Angel Civil War, and he wants to atone for those mistakes. I also think he continues to turn to the angels because he doesn't truly fit in with the humans, but he doesn't truly fit in with the angels. So he's constantly hopping back and forth between the two of them, searching for the purpose in his life, searching for belonging. The sad thing is, if you'll allow me to break my one rule, Cass never experienced a moment of true happiness, and this is not by any means Dean's fault. Well, I guess he technically did experience a moment of happiness, and then he immediately died. But you get my point. Like, Dean doesn't owe Cass a romantic relationship, and Cass knows this, which is why he never presumed that Dean would be interested. He lived his life comfortable with the fact that the most he could do is be by Dean's side when Dean wanted him. But I think Cass's real struggle is that he could never truly get what he wanted from anybody, which is why he felt so lost and purposeless and really struggled with his free will. Like, he could never truly get the forgiveness he wanted from the angels, so he always felt like an outsider and unwelcome. But he kept trying in hopes that things will change, that he could atone. He never truly felt like he belonged with the humans because he's an angel. He's not super socially adept because of this. He doesn't eat or sleep or understand any pop culture references, even though he did get the power of pop culture, but we forgot about it. He has a lot of human emotions. By the end of the show, they are strong human emotions, so he can relate in that way, but he's never going to be human. Even when he lost his grace in the first half of season 9, he struggled a lot with being human and finding his place in the world. He, I think, especially felt useless and purposeless after Dean kicked him out of the bunker, because to him at least, it must have seemed like Dean only wanted him for his powers, so he was no longer useful. He really struggled to fit in with the humans, but he gained a lot of knowledge and understanding of humans during his time as a human, and I think that period was crucial in his character development. And after that, there was a shift in Cass, and I felt like he started to come to terms and better understand his feelings of guilt, regret, and love. Now, Sam and Dean extended a place for Cass to belong with them. I think it was kind of rough in season 7 and 8 because of the whole betrayal and Cass being usurped dealio. But season 9 onwards, I really feel like Cass really started to feel that sense of belonging with them as his family. It gets even better when Jack is added, because I feel like Jack is someone that Cass can relate to, because Jack also doesn't feel like he belongs with the angels or the humans. He's a Nephilim. So for Cass, especially, having Jack and parenting Jack in the last 3 seasons of the show was the purpose he had been searching for. He made a free will decision to betray both the angels and Sam and Dean so that Jack could be born, and I think that may have been one of his most free will decisions, because it wasn't tied to anyone else. This was him making this decision, and it was a good decision in the end. Jack became God, and I'm glad that though we had some rough patches with Jack, Cass's decision overall saved the world. I also think that Cass had been searching for purpose and belonging for so long that when Jack came along, it was like he finally had what he had been searching for. He had a family and a child in a very non-conventional way, but in a way that was so meaningful to Cass. I mean, if you think about it, this is what Cass was searching for with Claire in season 10, as well as like relieving his guilt. However, she was like unresponsive to this idea. The elephant in the room is that despite finding all of this in the later seasons, he still only experienced a moment of true happiness when he told Dean how he felt. I think that Cass never truly felt like he belonged with the Winchesters, because despite being welcomed and loved and loving them, there was always something missing. I mean, I can imagine that it would be difficult to be told you're like a brother to the men you're in love with. That probably disconnected him a lot from truly feeling like he belonged with them, which is again why I think he bounced around a lot, especially when things weren't good with Dean. He would distance himself from them more. Cass gained the power of free will at the end of season 4, and he struggled a lot with having free will and using free will and the consequences of free will. I think that when Cass left Dean at the end of season 5 after they stopped the apocalypse, that was the first time that Cass truly had to make decisions on his own. He didn't do a great job because the angels' plan to get God's attention, the apocalypse, was thwarted. The angels were now in the midst of a civil war to find a leader for heaven. Cass enters this war with good intentions. He wants the angels to have free will and not be led like they have been before. He doesn't want the angels to start the apocalypse train again because he doesn't want Sam and Dean involved. So he builds an army and fights in this civil war. However, Cass has always turned to Dean for help when making decisions, and when he sees that Dean is out of the life and happy, he doesn't want to impose any more burdens on Dean, so he makes decisions for himself. He decides to take Crowley up on the partnership offer, knowing that in order to beat Archangel Raphael and win the Civil War, he'd need to be stronger. Cass and Crowley then team up to look for Purgatory so they can gulp all the souls in there and become supercharged. Cass started off with good intentions. It all became too much for him, but he'd come so far now, he wasn't going to turn back and admit he was wrong. Cass has a bit of an ego, and I think that when his ego is threatened by, say, him yelling at him, he goes into defensive mode and wants to prove that he is in fact correct. He then also gets corrupted by wanting the power, and after he gulps those souls, he truly believes that he will be a better god. I did give him a 3 out of 10, which was better than I gave Chuck, so I guess I believe that too. Once he started dying and reality came crashing down on him, he regrets his decisions and wants to atone for his mistakes for the rest of the show. This was a free will decision that went poorly, and he has to deal with the fact that he is to blame. In the past, if something went wrong, you could blame it on the higher-ups, but for the first time ever, Cass has to deal with the fact that there is no one else to blame but himself. It is hard, but he does everything he can to make it right with both Sam and Dean and the angels. He takes away Sam's crazy and gives it to himself. He helps them defeat the Leviathans and get stuck in purgatory with Dean in season 7, or season 8. End of season 7, beginning of season 8. Throughout season 8, Cass feels like he deserves punishment. He decides to stay in purgatory as punishment because of what he did, and even tells Dean that if he were to go back to heaven and see the destruction he caused during the Civil War, he would kill himself. Cass then once again loses his free will because Naomi starts controlling him, and when he gets his free will back because of Dean again, he abandons Dean to protect the tablet, thinking the tablet is what gave him his control back. This causes a rift between him and Dean, and that's when Cass really starts to spiral. Not only does he not have the angels, but Dean is really mad at him. And it's once again because of the decisions that Cass has made. Metatron is then able to manipulate Cass's weakness and desperate need for redemption, and it ends with the angels falling from heaven, which is once again something that Cass will take the burden and blame for because he messed up. He doubts himself a lot and has a lot of self-loathing tendencies, like in season 11, after the attack dog spell is removed. He feels so useless and powerless and so guilty for how the attack dog spell affected him. He just gives up. Like he binges Netflix and daytime television for the first half of the season because he's so depressed and feels like he doesn't have a purpose or drive and that he's useless. I do also think that him losing control of himself again at the end of season 10 and then having the angels try to kill him when he asked for their help in season 11 and then almost killing Dean in season 11 because he was under the attack dog spell was a huge hit to his ego. He was so useless and depressed that he decided to let Lucifer possess him so that Lucifer could kill Amara. This is how he thought he could be of service to Sam and Dean, by removing himself from the picture and replacing himself with someone more powerful. That shit hurts, man. Then of course when Lucifer is vessel hopping in season 12, once again Cass feels guilty and responsible for Lucifer being out in the world because he was the one who let him out. And once again, his plan backfired. This time, however, I think the major difference in this scenario compared to all the other scenarios where he had messed up is that Dean was very kind and thankful for what Cass did by letting Lucifer in and actually acknowledged Cass's worth. Basically, Cass throughout the entire show has to deal with the consequences of his actions and the guilt he feels for his past actions. And I think he does grow and learn from his mistakes because he's made all these mistakes. As well, he's gained an amazing sense of empathy and forgiveness for those around him. Think about how he saw Gadriel was just like him, wanting to belong again in heaven, and decided to make him an ally, and it paid off. Or how Cass was the only one who never wavered, standing by Jack after he killed Mary, completely. After he killed Mary and wanted to understand Jack's point of view. Yeah, I think Cass was able to gain an extremely amazing depth of empathy throughout the entire show, and he really did learn from his past mistakes and understand other people's mistakes as well. A few more things about Cass. He was by far the best parent towards Jack. I think that becoming Jack's parent was really good for him. Cass was extremely loyal the entire show to the Winchesters. Like, yeah, there were some hiccups, but without a fail, he would always return to them, and he would put them first a lot of the time, which is why I think that his death being saving Dean was the best way to kill him off. In my opinion, Cass was, with some exceptions, the best written character on the show. I actually feel like the Cass we saw at the end of the series is different from the Cass we met in season 4, and I can peg his growth and the things that he learned and the mistakes that haunt him that made him who he was at the end of the show, which was just the most beautiful angel ever. Like, I can never not express how much I truly love Cass. Like, I just can't. I think he was an amazing character. Like, absolutely phenomenal. Alright, so let's move on to Jack. So Jack was a later addition to the show. He was introduced at the very end of season 12, like the very last minute of the last episode of season 12. We get to fully know him in season 13. He's Lucifer's son with Kelly Klein, a human, making him a Nephilim. He's technically the Antichrist, but gets an upgrade and becomes God at the end of the show. Jack is absolutely precious. He gets born looking somewhere between 18 to 23 years old because Kelly told him he needed to grow up fast, so he did. Jack has a very kind, sweet nature to him. He's very innocent because he really is like mentally quite young. He's extremely intelligent and picks up on things quite quickly. Since he is new to the world, he has this curiosity and like want to experience life. He also happens to be one of the most powerful beings in all the universes. But you know, he enjoys Star Wars, and his favorite character is Ahsoka, which I mean, I think we can all agree, like, she is everything, and that is the correct opinion to have about Star Wars. Jack, in my opinion, was the best addition to the show since Cass came in season 4, and I think that he was what saved a quickly dying show. I mean, it was basically already dead in season 12 to begin with, so he really did revive a very much dead show, in my opinion. So Jack's main struggle throughout his 3-season run on the show is with himself and his powers and his purpose. Jack's father is Lucifer, and that hangs over his head throughout the entire show. He doesn't want to be like his dad, he wants to be like his mom. He's scared of himself and what he may do with his powers. I think for me, one of the most heart-wrenching scenes was when Jack was in the bathroom in the bunker at the beginning of season 13, and he had been dealing with like a lot of abuse from Dean, and he was being hunted by everyone, and he was born like 3 days ago, so he was trying to understand himself and his powers and like who he was basically, and he's just standing in the middle of his bedroom stabbing himself over and over again. By the way, like, he can't die, right? I mean, not in any sense that like a human could die in. He needs a special little weapon to kill him. So like he would just heal himself. And he's just in so much distress because he doesn't understand why he can't die. But he knows that like this must be wrong. And Dean walks in on him doing this and like freaks out, and Jack gets scared and asks Dean like who he is and expressed that he was, you know, scared of that he would go bad. And Dean, being angry little boy whose boyfriend just died and his ex-boyfriend just died and his mom's in an alternate dimension now, really deals with it horribly by like basically saying that if Jack goes bad, he'll like kill himself, but he basically implied that like Jack would, you know, go bad. So good pep talk, Dean. Point is that Jack, much like Sam, fears his own capabilities and powers because he thinks they might corrupt him. We see the ramifications of his fear of hurting Sam, Dean, and Cass after he accidentally kills an innocent guard while trying to stop a bad guy during a case, and he leaves them for their own protection. After that moment, Jack is trying to prove that he is good to Sam, Dean, and Cass. He spends time trying to find a way to open a portal to Apocalypse World to get Mary back, and then that whole plan goes wrong and he gets stuck in Apocalypse World. And then in Apocalypse World, he gains more confidence in his powers and that they could be used to help people. He is extremely powerful. I cannot preface this enough. He is way too powerful for Sam, Dean, and Cass to be in charge of. It's like them being in charge of a nuclear bomb. And upon realizing that he can be useful because of this, he gains like a lot more confidence. But because of his inexperience and overzealousness, he makes a bad like tactical move and gets some people killed, which makes him feel guilty. And also, you know, now he desperately wants revenge on alternate version Michael. It's very much like his father's in that regard. I'm not talking about Lucifer, I'm talking about the adopted dads. After Lucifer slurps up his grace, I haven't eaten a marshmallow in a minute. Lucifer was a shit parent. Lucifer really said, oh, you don't want to like run away with me, Jack? You don't get to be powerful anymore. He feels useless, and I think he doesn't want to be seen as a burden to Sam, Dean, and Cass, because he's human now, once his grace gets slips up. He almost runs away because Dean made a comment about how he wasn't strong enough to go on a hunt. Dean! He really seeks their approval and wants to be a part of their family, and he's very sensitive to criticism, especially when it comes to losing Sam, Dean, and Cass. Without his powers, Jack struggles even more with himself and his purpose and who he is. He ends up getting sick, and just as the prime 3 dads and a kid was like gracing my screen, he dies. He was actually okay with dying, and I wonder if it was because without his powers he never felt whole and perhaps thought he was like useless, so it was okay if he died. Like without his powers there was no purpose for him on this earth. And you know, before he died he was frustrated at his inability to help the way he used to, and I think that a lot of his self-worth is based on how helpful he can be, because he's like overcompensating in order to avoid the stigmatization of having Lucifer be his biological father. Once he comes back from the dead, he's using his soul to stay alive because his body was shutting down because the Nephilim is unnatural, which I don't really think helped his self-esteem in any way. He now has access to powers, but he's not supposed to use them. But this is a struggle for him because he doesn't like to see the people he loves in danger, and having the capacity to do something about that makes it very difficult for him to not do that. He's like a really amazing talk with Cass about his fears of like losing them, and especially Sam and Dean, who are human. And Cass explains that because they are immortal, they need to come to terms with losing Sam and Dean eventually. Jack then proceeds to like drain all of his soul, saving Sam, Dean, and Cass from alt Michael, and then slurps up Michael's grace. And so now he's soulless, and he has his powers back. Now, soulless Jack, you know, barring what he did to Mary, which was an accident, I feel like wasn't as bad as like soulless Sam was. He was more just confused and super powered. Like soulless Jack, more than anything, doesn't take criticism well and desperately wants people to think of him as good. So I feel like soulless Jack is just an amplification of Jack's normal fears and concerns. So like he kills Mary by accident because Mary is concerned with his behavior. He's a little snake. See, she doesn't know this, but it was a big deal to Dean. I'm just not even gonna explain it. I just want to bring it up. But more importantly, like he sizzled Nick, who was Lucifer's vessel, to a crisp. And she was obviously concerned. A little concerning to see someone just sizzle someone else with their mind, and told him that something was wrong with him, which I kind of think was a bad move. He's super powered, Mary. He's soulless, super powered boy. Maybe don't criticize him. But this kind of clashed with his want to be good, and he got scared and mad. When he got scared and mad, he killed her by accident because his powers were released, kind of like out of his control due to his angry emotions. It was like a sonic wave that came out of him and just kind of like dissipated her. Like it wasn't like he grabbed a knife and stabbed her or anything. Like he lost control of his powers in his anger, and it just exploded out of him. And then Jack, after this, obviously desperately fears losing Sam and Dean over this incident because he did kill their mom. And he does try really hard to bring Mary back from the dead, but he fails. He even like kidnaps Rowena to do it, which was not a good look. but still, he tried. He doesn't fully feel guilty because he doesn't have a soul, but he does still seek Sam and Dean's approval, and like being a Winchester is extremely important to him. The angels manipulate him using his fear of losing Sam and Dean to make like more angels. They were like, hey, you know what Sam and Dean would really love? If you made more angels. And I'm out here like has he ever heard Dean talking about angels? Dean does not want more angels. In fact, I'm pretty sure if they wiped out all of the angels except Cass, he'd be living his best life. And then Sam and Dean manipulate him to go into the Malak box, and that just makes things worse. I wonder how that could have backfired Dean. But in the end, I think after like talking with Cass and then having Dean pull a gun on him, he does admit faults and understands what he did is wrong, and he even calls himself a monster because he did it. And Dean doesn't end up actually pulling the trigger, but then he just then dies again because, you know, he really is a Winchester. He had to like catch up to everyone else's death counts, but he only had 3 seasons to do so. When he comes back, he still doesn't have a soul. Things are a bit weird, but he's here to save the day, so he's accepted back. When he does get his soul back, the gravity of what he did really crashes down on him, and like the poor kid spirals into depression and fear that Sam and Dean will never forgive him. To be fair, he has a right to have that concern when it comes to like Dean at least. He is so desperate to prove that he is good and to atone for his sins that he agrees to become a human bomb to kill Chuck and Amara in hopes that Sam and Dean will forgive him if he does that. Like, he is canonically doing all of this to make up for killing Mary. And then when the plan goes badly, he doesn't end up killing Chuck and Amara, he feels like he failed his destiny and he doesn't have his powers again, so he doesn't think he should be alive because he's useless. It's a mirror of season 14 when he lost his powers and was okay with dying because he felt like if he couldn't fulfill his special destiny, he shouldn't be alive. Now, the show does end with Jack becoming God, and I think that he was the happiest and calmest and surest version of himself when he did become God. I think this was the path he was always on, and I'm glad he achieved it. He achieved his destiny. He took out Chuck, he saved the world, and he became God in the process. And on top of that, it could be argued that he did redeem himself in Sam and Dean's eyes because of what he did. So he now has a purpose, and he can feel like he really matters. I mean, Jack remodels all of heaven, so he's a proactive God, and I give him a 10 out of 10, so I feel good about him. Okay, so some other things Jack struggles with a lot is belonging because he's a Nephilim and there's no one else like him on Earth. He's also got like parenting drama. Basically, his father's Lucifer, who he was told to fear, but he was curious to get to know him. And then Lucifer manipulated him and gulped up his grace. He never got to know his mom because Kelly died in childbirth, and he carries around the guilt of her dying so he could live, as well as the grief of not knowing his mom. He does try to feel connected to his mom throughout the series by visiting his grandparents, and he does visit Kelly in heaven when he was dead for one episode. He also gets to see a video of her that she left, and honestly he's just trying to live up to that good image that Kelly implanted into his mind of who he could be and the destiny that he could fulfill to make the world a better place. Also, you know, his 3 adopted dads. He struggles with feeling like a burden or that they don't want him. He also has a really great relationship with each of them, and he tries really hard to please them and make them proud, which I think is really sweet. Also, like, my favorite scene ever is like when Lucifer arrives in Apocalypse World, and he's got like Sam, and he like brought Sam back from the dead. And he's like merging up with Sam, and he brought the Sam back from the dead as like a gift to Jack to like make him trust him. And then like Jack's all like, oh, maybe I should talk to him. And Sam Dean has to like, no, you cannot talk to Lucifer. And then like Lucifer ends up kind of talking with Jack. And then Cass notices this. So he goes and he tells Sam and Dean, and then all the 3 of them like come back and they're like angrily yelling at Jack, and they're like angrily like saying things to Lucifer, and it's just so funny. I can't do it. I'll just put the clip. I find it so funny, that entire episode. And every single time that like Jack would refer to Lucifer as like his father or something, the camera would like pan on Sam and Dean and Cass's face, and they'd all look so upset and like melancholic. I was living for the parental drama. Like I was living for it. Okay, it was like the best thing about the show in the longest time. I loved it. Let's move on to Crowley. So we first get introduced to Crowley in the middle of season 5. He starts off the series as like a crossroads demon, but eventually does become the King of Hell, and he dies in the last episode of season 12. Crowley is like a cheeky little British demon who has a lot of sass and has perfected the double cross. Crowley is actually the villain for like half of his run on the show, and then he's like a partial ally to Sam and Dean. Calls them moose and squirrel. Crowley is like a very driven demon. I mean, he rises from the ranks of a mere crossroads demon to the King of Hell. He's quite meticulous and intelligent. Crowley is neither bad nor good. He's on whatever side will benefit him the most, or whatever side he thinks will be winning. Sometimes he's on the good side, other times he's on the bad side. He's like a very fancy bureaucrat. He's revenge driven and prides himself on his public perception and fears being seen as weak. I think what's interesting about him is that though he did change throughout his 7 seasons run on the show, I don't think he was the best written character, and a lot of the times he was used as a plot device to be the villain of the season if needed, or to like cause a problem so we can have another season. I would say the shift in Crowley can be categorized as pre-season 8 Crowley and post-season 8 Crowley. Pre-season 8 Crowley is power hungry and he wants to rule hell. That is his end goal. He does help Sam and Dean stop the apocalypse. Because he wants Lucifer out of the way. He teams up with Cass to slurp up some souls from purgatory to secure his rule in hell. In season 7, he's like barely there. He gets rejected by Dick Roman and then agrees to help Sam, Dean, and Cass take out the Leviathans because his ego was hurt. In season 8, he is the villain again because Supernatural is nothing if not consistent, and wants the demon tablet, and he's trying to stop them from closing the gates of hell. Which I mean, that makes sense. That's his territory. They're gonna just shut him out. Things start to shift for Crowley is when Sam gives him the demon cure. Well, he gives him almost all of the demon cure at the end of season 8. This consists of like human blood, and I would say he still remains his morally gray self, who they team up every once in a while with, but also still want to kill. But I think there's a shift more in favor of the Winchesters after season 8. In season 9, he's struggling with an addiction to human blood, as well as losing his credibility in hell, as he was captured by Sam and Dean. And there's Abaddon, who wants his throne. Because of his losing of allies to Abaddon, he kind of leans more on Sam and Dean to keep his throne, but he also does them some favors, like he gets Gadriel out of Sam. And that's huge, considering he was their captive for a while. He then takes Dean to get the Mark of Cain, and so begins the romance that is Dean and Crowley. He does end up securing his reign in hell. He has Dean as a BFF for summer, and I think that was when the real shift began. He actually became a sort of ally to the Winchesters, and he actually started to like them, and he stopped caring a lot about his power in hell, and he became softer, I would say. There was also the whole thing with Rowena, where she was trying to manipulate, Rowena's his mom, where she was trying to manipulate him, and then he kicked her to the curb. His relationship with his mother is complicated. She wants to kill him. He wants to kill her. They kind of still love each other. In fact, that's pretty much his relationship with like everyone in the show. He dips his toes into fatherhood in season 11 with Amara because he wants her power under his control. Still showing that he does care about his power, but Amara is kind of like unresponsive to this. Lucifer is then out of the cage and Crowley's worst fears come true, and Lucifer tortures and humiliates him in his own kingdom. And then the rest of Crowley's time on the show is focused on him getting his revenge on Lucifer. He dies trapping Lucifer in Apocalypse World and saving Sam and Dean, which I actually think was the perfect way to end his time on this show. Crowley was just morally gray. He wanted power, he didn't want love at one point, he valued his reputation, he liked revenge and double crosses, and at the end of the day, he was a great character, and he was really fun to follow, and I think he got a good death. Which is literally impossible on this show. And everyone dies. Let's talk about Lucifer. Lucifer was introduced to the show in season 5, like technically at the very end of the last episode in season 4. He was rising from the cage to, you know, start the apocalypse, but we don't really see him until season 5. He's an archangel and, you know, the devil. Lucifer is an interesting case because he's in and out of the show a lot and his writing is really inconsistent. And he's played by multiple people because of vessel hopping. In fact, the interesting thing about Lucifer is he's one of the only characters that are like main characters that actually are played by different people, because he actually does vessel hop. Like Cass doesn't really vessel hop because he's stuck in that one vessel because Jimmy died. And then Crowley never vessel hops. He does like vessel hops like once. So Lucifer is the villain in season 5. He wants Sam to be his vessel. He wants the apocalypse to start and destroy the world. It appears that his motivation is similar to the angels in that he wants Chuck's attention, which is, I think, the first main thing we can say about Lucifer is that he has daddy issues. I mean, who in this show doesn't? But like daddy issues define him as a character. He's like always felt betrayed by Chuck for locking him in a cage and choosing humanity over him and abandoning him. You know, the usual Lucifer stuff. Lucifer gets so upset that Chuck leaves with Amara at the end of season 11, effectively abandoning him again, that he throws a temper tantrum to get his attention and then gets Kelly pregnant because, I don't know, now he wants now he wants fatherhood for some reason. Then we get Lucifer being really jazzed about being a father, and then when Jack is not the son he wanted, he effectively acts like his own father towards Jack and gets rid of his powers and takes them away from him. The cycle of abuse. Lucifer is also pretty power hungry and wants admiration and love. He wants people to worship him in the way that Chuck is worshipped, and he feels like because the narrative written about him is so negative, he'll never be able to escape that stereotype. Lucifer, I don't think, actually knows what he wants. He's very impulsive and he can't focus on one task. Like, he was king of heaven for like an episode and then gave up. He's super manipulative and very emotional. He's like a pretty intelligent guy, I would say. He's super powerful. He's not the best of guys. He really likes torturing. He corrupts his vessel, and after he dies, his vessel Nick becomes like a serial killer. Look, I think Lucifer was fun. He added some spice and flavor to the show. And he was like Crowley on steroids, which is hilarious because Crowley and Lucifer plotlines are like very similar. In fact, they both torture each other. I just don't think Lucifer cared as much about Crowley's torture. Like, it was more just like an inconvenience. Anyways, Lucifer entered the show a villain, and he died a villain at the end of season 13. And we learned some things along the way about him. And he did give us beautiful Jack, but at the end of the day, his writing was absolute chaos. Just like him. It's like no one could agree what they wanted to do with him. They kept bringing him back into the show, but having absolutely no direction. It was like there was a tug of war going on with the writers about like what to do with him. And it seemed like no one knew what to do. And everyone had differing ideas. And at the end of the day, we got absolute mess of like a product because no one knew what was going on and everyone wanted something different for him. And it was all just a huge mess. All right, let's talk about Bobby. Bobby is first introduced to us at the end of season 1 and he dies in the middle of season 7. He's a ghost for the rest of season 7. He makes a few appearances between season 8 and 12 in like flashback kind of dealios or like hallucinations. And then in season 13, his alternate version is introduced to the show. And he stays for the rest of the series as his alternate version. I'm not going to address his alternate version because I just don't care. Just know he's pretty much the same, but with a different tragic backstory. So Bobby's a hunter. He was good friends with John, who is, you know, Dean and Sam's Pop. He is considered to be like an uncle to Sam and Dean. However, Bobby does consider them to be like his kids, and Sam and Dean do have that adopted father kind of thing going on with him. And he is a better father than John. Hands down. Then again, the bar is here, and Bobby like did minimum effort. He's pretty much an ex machina throughout the show. He has a vast amount of knowledge, and Sam and Dean and other hunters always call him and come to him for help. He basically runs the hunter network. So like in the show, say they run into like local law enforcement who want to do their actual job and check their FBI credentials, they'll like give the person Bobby's number, and then they'll like call, and Bobby will pretend to be the head honcho of whatever FBI department. If that makes sense. So he was kind of running the vast hunter network throughout America, which was a huge job, but he did a good job. He's a pretty grouchy old guy, lots of sass, but he's got a good heart. He also wears flannel. Yes, he does wear flannel. He got into hunting after his wife was possessed and he had to kill her. He struggles throughout the series mostly with his fear of losing Sam and Dean, and of course, because they are stupid and always put themselves in harm's way, this is a very valid fear. He's like in a wheelchair for season 7 and struggles with being useful and learns that he has valued as a disabled person, and then he gets cured. So, yeah. He also struggles with his guilt of killing his wife. I mean, I like Bobby. I think he was great for Sam and Dean. His death was pretty stupid. I did like him struggling with being a vengeful spirit and wanting to stay behind to help Sam and Dean. And I liked how he finally allowed himself to let go and to like die fully and go to the afterlife. Yeah, I liked Bobby. So let's talk briefly about Rowena. I felt like I needed to touch on some women because, as I mentioned before, Supernatural doesn't have any female main characters. Like I think Rowena would be considered a side character, but she's one of two more prominent female side characters. So we're gonna talk about her. Also, I love Rowena. So Rowena is introduced in season 10. She's an extremely powerful witch. She's also Crowley's mom. Rowena spends most of her time on the show like Crowley, where she's pretty much morally gray and she kind of bounces between the good and the bad side. She initially really hates the Winchesters, and especially Dean, because Dean and Crowley are like BFFs. But she actually ends up forming a really nice bond with Sam that I really like. Rowena was kicked out of her coven after having Crowley because I guess she like wasn't allowed to do that. She always resented Crowley for losing her spot in the coven. She has always felt rejected by her witch kin, and she's never felt appreciated by them. She does try to form a coven at one point, and it goes badly. She's really good at the double cross. Seems it runs in the family. After she gets manipulated by Lucifer and he kills her, there's a shift in Rowena. She thirsts for more power to make herself invincible to ever having that scenario occur again. She also changes a lot after Crowley dies regarding her actions towards Crowley and how she never got to make things right with him. She becomes good allies with Sam, Dean, and Cass, and dies in season 15, sacrificing herself to close the rift that Chuck opened to Hell and to save them. Her arc very much mirrors Crowley's. She becomes Queen of Hell after she dies, and we love that for her. Rowena was a sassy little firecracker, and she was quite cunning. She was such a joy to have on the show. I'm really not gonna lie, she was a puff of fresh air every once in a while. Let's talk about Mary. Mary is Sam and Dean's dead mom, who the show brings back from the dead at the end of season 11 and then kills off near the end of season 14. Here's a brief backstory on Mary. She was raised as a hunter, and then she met John, and she left the life to be with him. How her death comes about is that John was killed, and she made a deal with the Yellow-Eyed Demon to save him, and he was like, I want access to your house on this specific date, and she went through with it because she is a Winchester, and we can't let people die as a Winchester. She then interrupts Yellow-Eyed Demon, putting demon blood in Baby Sam, so she dies. He sizzles her on the ceiling. When Mary is first brought back, she struggles with adjusting to life in current day. Like, she died 30 odd years ago, and a lot has changed. Her kids, who she last saw as a baby and a small child, are now grown adults who live in an underground secret bunker and are hunters with an angel best friend. Also, John is dead, and technology has advanced, and the world doesn't look the same as it did before. She was having a lot of adjustment issues and ended up leaving Sam and Dean for a while. A decision that still to this day like makes me mad. I get that she was having a hard time adjusting, but Like, to say that you want to go back to heaven where your kids are little instead of spending time with like your real children, it's not the best thing to say. Anyways, she sort of makes up with them and they figure out how to have a more comfortable relationship. Mary desperately wants Sam and Dean to not have to be hunters anymore, and also has this like secret thrill when hunting that she doesn't like to admit. But yeah, she joins the British Men of Letters and then realizes she was an idiot. Then she realized she was a ship mother and vows to do better. She punches Lucifer and chills in the alternate dimension for an entire season. She's barely in season 14 and then uses a conflict plot point to ruin perfectly good co-parenting fun times. Mary is nice enough. She's quite a skilled hunter. I don't think she was a good addition to the show. And I think that they wrote her off in a really bad way. I think they should have kept their mom dead. I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion, but Mary should have stayed dead. Lastly, I'm going to talk about John. Johnny boy. I know that John is far from a main character. Just allow me a moment to like vent a little bit. I hate John Winchester, okay? I fucking hate him. I do not care what the show tries to tell me. He is a bad parent. Tons of people's spouses die. Some are even murdered. You know what normal, well-adjusted individuals with children do? They raise their children and give them the best life they could have because that's what their spouse would want. That's what Mary wanted for her kids, right? This is canon, okay? But John decides that his revenge quest is more important than his children. You cannot tell me otherwise. I understand that parents are individuals too, but when you have young children, it's not just about you. You brought these kids into your life. You are in charge of these kids. Your life is now not just your own, it's your kids' lives as well. You cannot make decisions for a 6-month-old and a 4-year-old like this, okay? You just can't. He constantly left them unsupervised. He raised them jumping from town to town so they were never able to like get a good education. I don't even know how the fuck Sam graduated high school and was able to go to university. Go to Stanford. That just shows how, why did I point back here? He's literally not here. I don't know why I keep pointing back here. It's like he's like here. He literally went to Stanford. I don't know how he did that, but I know that that boy over there didn't even graduate high school. I just feel it in my bones. And then like, they also weren't able to put down roots anywhere, like, or like make friends, you know, like have normal childhood experiences. Sam had an imaginary friend because he would, like, Akana is for lonely, bullied children who don't have friends. Sam got Akana, like, that's so sad. And it's on you, John Winchester. He made it so that they have unhealthy grieving tactics because he never allowed them to properly grieve for Mary in a healthy and constructive way that doesn't involve revenge. Like, your kids are just gonna see the way that you grieve and then pick that up as well, especially when they're so young, you know? But he's like forced the hunting life on Dean and put so much pressure on him to keep Sam safe. No wonder he is maladjusted to losing Sam. Okay? No fucking wonder, boy. Like, John made it so that he has so little value in himself, he only values Sam. And not to mention, do you remember that episode? I freaking love this episode, but Dean gets caught like shoplifting and he gets sent to like a juvenile home for like troubled boys or something. And John literally just leaves him there for like a month or two, like as punishment, because like he got caught and he could have put Sam, like he left Sam alone. He could have put Sam in danger when he was literally like when Dean was literally just trying to feed them. Like, I know that he lost the money, but he was like 13 and he was just trying to get food for Sam. And John was like, no, you're gonna be like, I could easily come pick you up, you know? But I'm not gonna. I'm gonna leave you to like have a punishment because you wanted to feed your brother. And then he went to the group home and it was great. And the guy who was running And I was like, yes, Dean, look at you getting someone who tells you that you have worth. And then he left because he couldn't leave Sam with John. That episode made me cry. That episode made me cry. When he was gonna go, I'm not kidding, when he was gonna go to the prom with whatever her name was, and like he was so excited to go, and like he was thriving, and then Sunny, I think his name was, came in and was like your dad's here, and then John was just like out in the car like honking the horn, and I was like, oh, for fuck's sake. And like Sunny was like, you know, like you don't have to go, you can stay. And Dean just like, you can tell he wants to stay, and he looks out the window and he's Sam like playing with a toy in the Impala, and he, oh my god, yeah, okay, I need to stop. Anyways, John made it so that his children valued family above themselves and their own wants and needs. Imagine fighting with your child who wants to leave a dangerous and bad lifestyle to go to university and get an education and become a lawyer. That is every parent's dream, John. What the absolute fuck? Then to have the absolute nerve, okay, to come back via Magic Pearl in season 14 and tell Dean that he thought he would have moved on from hunting by now and settled down with a family. I'm sorry, John. Did you not train and basically force Dean to follow this path? Why are you surprised that your maladapted life training worked? Why are you so like, whoa, I thought my bad parenting wouldn't have affected you this way? You're lucky Dean was able to have the family he did on the show. You're lucky he didn't die at fucking 22. John, you are lucky Sam even graduated high school to get into university. I'm sorry, but any father that has their children refer to him as sir, it's not a good look. Okay? You missed every major holiday. I know you did, John. I saw the Christmas flashback episode. I know that Dean, okay? He literally pretended that gifts were given from you to Sam so that Sam wouldn't know he never came back for Christmas. John, you missed, like, never gave them a compliment until like that one episode in season 14, you know? Look, okay, I know that he died for Dean, and that's great, but like, that's one thing out of like, just a shit ton of like, bad parenting, okay? One good action does not repent you from like 15 years of being a bad, like, no, like 20 years of being a bad parent, okay? There's no, like, yes, it was good, but like, you did the bare minimum that any parent would do, John. What do you want, a fucking award, okay? Most parents would die for their child, okay? You're not an MVP. You know what good parents do? They raise their fucking children, okay? They don't leave their children in this maladaptive, traumatic experience and then be like, what? I thought y'all would be fine. Bitch. I don't want to hear the argument that John was doing the best he could, okay? Because he was not doing the best he could. The best he could was John was not doing the best he could when he took his young children out of a stable living situation to embark on a fruitless revenge quest, okay? And no one can tell me otherwise. And if anyone says that he was doing his best, they're either Dean or fucking delusional, okay? Look, not saying he didn't love his kids, okay? He did love his kids, okay? But he was a god-awful parent. And he is so lucky that Sam and Dean didn't turn out worse. Okay? Like, he is so lucky. Like, they're already kind of a fucking mess. But, like, they could have been way worse. Fucking John. Like, fucking John. I can't do it with John. Like, he makes me viscerally angry. Like, I think he might be. Is he? Oh my god. I think he's going on one of my. Yeah. Do I hate him more than Achilles? Yes. Do I hate him more than Odysseus? Maybe. Oh my god. I don't think I can justifiably hate on Achilles the same that I can hate on John. Like, I feel as though because Achilles was like 14, I can't do that, but I can hate on John. And like, yeah. Okay, John Winchester, you are my third most hated fictional character. Yeah. We'll put you below Odysseus for now, and I'll think on it. Let's figure something out. Thank you so much for watching. The next part will be out when the world tells me it needs to be out. Perhaps 2022. Did he really have to start chewing on something like right now? I got a hamster. His name is Garth Davies, and he is a chewer. I mean, he chews on his cage at every hour of every night. Can you see? You can hear him. I'm waiting for him to go to bed so I can actually film stuff. But he's like a chewer, so he's just doing shit at all times. Anyways, I love him. He's beautiful, but yeah, he's making noise now. Anyways, the next part will be out when the world wills it to be out. And thank you for watching. Bye.